We are very strong in gaming because this is who we are, this is our DNA, and we've been doing games for a very long time. Now, as we are getting more traction, more users, we are expanding beyond gaming. We have 4 or 5 verticals beyond gaming that are doing very well. The first one is other Web3 and NFT projects. So we're very close with projects such as the Bored Ape Yacht Club and others. So we're working hand in hand with them to create interoperability between them and the Sandbox. Number 3 is music. We've been very successful in partnering with famous musicians, for example, Snoop Dogg, and many others that are coming. Number 4 is everything entertainment, movies, TV series. We've announced a deal with Lionsgate, for example, and you're gonna see more coming. And number 5 is everything fashion and luxury goods.
You're listening to Lights Camera Crypto, the podcast exploring all things entertainment and Web3. I'm your host, Stephen Ladden, and this week our guest is the Sandbox US CEO, Mathieu Nouzareth. In this episode, Mathieu discusses being a successful entrepreneur for the past 30 years and how starting 5 companies eventually led him to join the board of the Sandbox and subsequently move into the position as the CEO of the US. Mathieu then provides an in-depth look at what his role as Sandbox's US CEO encompasses and how he's positioning the Sandbox for a successful future in music, television, movies, fashion, and gaming. Let's dive in. Mathieu, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited to be here today.
Yeah, same. And really interested to unpack and learn more about what Sandbox is doing these days and also just your personal journey to Sandbox. Maybe give us a little color. Was working in a Web3 environment something or the future of the internet, something ever on your radar as a kid growing up? What were you really into and how did you find your way to Sandbox?
I've been an entrepreneur for the past 30 years. So I started 5 companies in 30 years. Was fortunate enough to sell 3, to went public. And the last one actually was I started going into Bitcoin. I started a Bitcoin mining company in Canada, a green Bitcoin mining company in Canada, and I really started to get into crypto in 2017, like big time. So I started this company, but also started to invest. I took part in a lot of ICOs, for those who remember. I thought it was fun. I thought I could get rich. It worked, only for a while, but it worked for maybe a few weeks, and then it didn't work anymore. But I still got the crypto bug, and this is when in 2018, 2019, I decided I would really want to spend more time in the crypto space, and I joined the Sandbox as a board member first in 2019, I think, and then as a full-time CEO for the US in early 2022.
Awesome. And what about Sandbox attracted you to the company first as a board member and later as CEO of US? What is it about the company that inspired you to initially get involved and then take on a larger role?
Initially, so I sold my first company to a company called Gameloft in 2018. And as when you sell a company, you usually have what you call a lockup period. And my lockup was until the end of 2021. And after that, I was on my way to have a sabbatical, wanted to take some time off. But being a board member already and seeing the traction that the Sandbox was having, seeing the vision, the mission, the ambition of the project, when the founders called me and said, why don't you join us instead of doing a sabbatical? Took me like a few days to think about it, talk to my wife, and we decided to change plan. And instead of moving back to England, we decided to move from New York to LA, and the rest is history for me.
Very cool. And could you pinpoint, was there a difference maker, a deciding factor within all of that? You mentioned taking the sabbatical. Like what was if you had to reduce it down to 1 or 2 factors, what were those?
It's really for me was first of all, seeing the actual traction of the project, seeing the excitement from the community. I think what the founders often said we're able to build is really amazing. They built a brand, they built a community, they built an army of believers who really want to be in the Sandbox. And since we are a UGC stands for user-generated content platform, this is very important to have content creators believing in the project and coming to the Sandbox and building stuff. So I was seeing that, I was seeing the excitement, I was seeing the number of users, coming in. I was seeing the number of new experiences or new games being built for the Sandbox that was really phenomenal. And I decided this was for me like once in a lifetime opportunity. It being at the beginning of a new tech giant being built.
Sure, in real time. So it's
Yeah.
you're building it as it's being built with the user generated content. On that end, is there what's the focus currently in terms of entertainment and media? And obviously, you guys are in a lot of different fields, fashion, gaming, etc. What's the landscape with what you guys are working on currently?
So the company actually, this is interesting because this overnight success that is Sandbox took like maybe 11 years in the making. The company was started in 2011, 2012, then went through a lot of different phases, and it was a game company. And the reason I'm saying that is because the company in 2011, 2012 was really a game company. We already had a big success on mobile gaming. It was called the Sandbox at the time. It was a single player 2D mobile game. And then we wanted to relaunch in 2018. We rebooted the franchise, started from a blank sheet. And we created a new sandbox that was a game on the blockchain and going from 2D to 3D and from single player to multiplayer slash social. And so to answer your question, we are very strong in gaming because this is who we are, this is our DNA, and we've been doing games for a very long time. Now, as we are getting more traction, more users, we are expanding beyond gaming. We have 4 or 5 verticals beyond gaming that are doing very well. The first one is other Web3 and NFT projects. So we're very close with projects such as the Bored Ape Yacht Club and others. So we're working hand in hand with them to create interoperability between them and the sandbox. Number 3 is music. We've been very successful in partnering with famous musicians, for example, Snoop Dogg, and many others that are coming. Number 4 is everything entertainment, movies, TV series. We've announced a deal with Lionsgate, for example, and you're gonna see more coming. And number 5 is everything fashion and luxury goods. This may be a bit surprising, but like in the real world, where people use fashion to show who they are to their community, it's really a signal that you're sending to the people around you. And the same applies to the metaverse. People want to have their avatar say, just saying something about who they are. So they're ready to invest and buy either digital handbags or digital sneakers, hats, t-shirts, these kind of things. So we've had a lot of success with fashion and luxury good companies, including Gucci and many others that are going to be announced.
Awesome. So it's you guys are definitely diversifying from, as you mentioned, the bread and butter games.
Yeah.
What as CEO, how do you have all these different verticals? How do you both position everyone for success and motivate everybody to get on board with the vision, but also make sure that each vertical is running smoothly?
So each different vertical as they have different goals. Gaming is for them. It's for the gaming vertical. It's pretty easy. It's almost business as usual because they've been used to do games on mobile console. It's just a new platform. They have to learn a few new tricks. So instead of selling microtransaction on mobile or selling a console games or digital packs, they have to learn Web3, which is sometimes not easy because Web3 is all of those companies are coming from Web 2 and going from Web 2 to Web 3 is a bit challenging sometimes. So we're helping them. They have to load in NFTs and the value proposition is different. Also the playbook is different. Usually in Web 2, you have the playbook is about growing as fast as you can and then you monetize on a very small percentage of your user base. Whereas Web3 is a bit different in that it's the user base is a bit smaller, but the monetization percentage is a bit higher. So they have to learn a few new things. And the rest, fashion is different. They also, for them, the metaverse and Web3, it's all about culture. It's all about surfing a new waves of their customers, being more involved into communities and also in Web3 and NFTs. So I would say every vertical is different. And we help not all, but some of the biggest partners, we help them by sometimes we build their experiences, and sometimes we give them advice, we consult with them. because all of this is brand new. Yeah, they have to learn as well.
And as everyone's learning, and as you're saying, it's a new space for a lot of people. How how impactful and necessary is your former background in being the CEO of other companies? How helpful has it been in the role you're currently in?
Just being a CEO is doing a lot of different things, considering a lot of different perspective. And I think that's very helpful when you work with big partners such as Gucci or Ubisoft or Snoop Dogg because they come from a different background. But at the end of the day, they all want to benefit or want to make sure their experiences is a success inside the sandbox. So, and being a CEO is having a lot of different people work together, whether it's technology engineers, designers, creative people, finance, narrative designers, game designers, the marketers. It's being managing all of those people together is really what makes those experiences a success, and this is typically what CEOs do.
Totally. And so essentially, you're the, and this is redundant for the purposes of unpacking what a CEO does. You're the pilot of the ship. You're managing the crew and everyone else and beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
And is there, I would imagine, I don't want to assume, but I would imagine that most people working at Sandbox, yourself included, there's no lack of excitement and passion because you're all in this thing that's being created in real time. Like you're not so much inspiring folks as you are just helping move everything forward.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate because out of the 500 employees that we have around the world, almost all of them are super passionate about the mission and the vision of the sandbox. They love gaming, they love the metaverse, they're very much into Web3, so everyone wants to push forward. So that's great as a CEO. So sometimes it's almost overwhelming, right? So you have to make sure everyone is in line, but it's really great.
How do you juggle managing the company with having a life? Have you mentioned your wife? How do you have a personal life? How do you have both worlds exist for you internally?
Yeah, I mean, CEOs is, I have to say, it's really a hard job. It's glamorous only for people who've never done it. And if you've done it, it's a lot of work. And it's very hard to disconnect between your work and your personal life. So you always in the background of your head, even when you're on vacation or when you're home, you always think about the issues you have, the problems you want to solve. It's not, I think it's different for everybody. But yeah, it's not easy. I can't say that I just go home and all of a sudden I switch off and go
Right.
into family mode. Yeah,
Sure. It's like, almost like you're always on, even if
yeah,
you can't turn it off, even if you try to.
yeah.
Have there been any techniques or strategies that have helped you at least compartmentalize a little bit so that you're not always consumed by the day to day?
I think experience over time. I've been a CEO for 30 years, so it's just experience. And yeah, you try to compartmentalize, and but it's not 100%. So sometimes it's so overwhelming that it's really hard to do that. But I think with time it gets better and better. And I guess maybe also different personalities react differently. Maybe some people are better at this than others. But I will say that it's so overwhelming that it is you really, it's not for everybody being a CEO, that's for sure.
What about your specific personality type and the things that you're interested in have helped make it right for you?
In all the companies that I co founded or created, not this one, this is the first company that I work for that I didn't start, but I'm usually passionate and I really like the product that I build, which really helps. It's not necessary, right? I think you have very successful CEOs who have no passion, no interest in the products or the companies they built, and it's a success. So I'm not saying this is a requirement for everybody, but in my case, I think it helps when things are tough or when things are really sometimes desperate. Just focus on the product, focus on the mission, the vision, and it helps get better. And I think different CEOs have different personalities. I'm more an introvert, for example. This is surprising because a lot of people assume that in order to be a successful CEO, you have to be an extrovert.
Sure.
And not in my case. I can fake being an extrovert. That's, over time, I've learned how to fake it over 30 years.
Is it that you're faking it or you've just become more accustomed to Like it being the CEO, having those conversations has brought you out, uh, inched you closer to being an extrovert, even though you're have an introverted base.
I don't know if you can change your true nature. I think I'm faking it. It's getting better, and it's less so being in a group of people or talking in front of people, even talking on live TV or interacting with a large group of people is usually draining for introvert. And for me, it is a little bit, but I'm fine doing it now. Yeah, maybe I'm changed me a little bit. Who knows? From being purely introvert to being maybe a little bit more extrovert. And nobody is one or the other. You just it's
Right.
just
There's
a little bit of you have everyone is a little bit of both, but you have one side that is overwhelming.
like a dominant trait.
Yeah, dominant trait, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is you mentioned, just to circle back to it, you mentioned passion and how it's not necessarily a requirement for success, but that a lot of yourself included CEOs and just people in general who have passion behind what they're doing, it makes the challenging times a little easier to weather. Is passion something that can come to someone if they don't have it initially for a project? Can that come over time, or is it something that you either have for a particular project, work, etc., or you don't?
I think it can come over time, but a passion or you can also have a strong interest, not necessarily for the verticals you're in, but also some people have a passion for just defining a goal and achieving it, and or fixing or solving hard problems, no matter what the vertical is. I think CEOs is very much like also it's yeah. Let's be honest, you have to be ambitious. You need to pass the marshmallow test, right? You can't. You really need to. And the marshmallow test is very long for CEO or for us for a founder of the company. From the time you start a company to potential selling the company or doing an IPO and becoming wealthy is 7, 10 years. So you have to be ready to postpone in this marshmallow for 7 to 10 years. And that's a very long time. When you see most of your friends who are not CEOs, when you see them making more money than you, working for big companies, and you're by yourself, very often CEOs, especially as founders, they make nothing or very little.
Sure.
And you have to wait, yeah, 6, 7 years, 10 years until that happens.
Is that something that you felt you had passed having your own companies, like that you passed the marshmallow test earlier in your career so that you felt comfortable in a role like this and that
Yeah. The thing is, okay, the marshmallow test, it's not as if you have a choice, right? When you start a company, you have only two options. Either you fail and the company goes bankrupt, or you succeed and you sell a company or you have an IPO. But I've never seen founders, it must happen, but like walking away, being fed up and say, I've had enough, I'll leave it to somebody else. You just, so the marshmallow test, just even if you don't like it, you either you don't have the marshmallow is gone, or you just have to wait. You have to be very patient. There is nothing you can do to grab it. Sometimes you're lucky it happens in a few years, 2 or 3 years, but that's more the exception than the norm. I think from an inception to an exit, I think a startup on average takes what, like 10 years, 9 years, something like
Mhm.
that. So you have to be, and you have to focus on the sole goal and the sole activity and the sole business for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. This is also a very long time. Most people change job every couple of years, 3 or 4 years. But as a CEO, you have to work in the same company for a long time.
And what gave you the confidence early on to have the groundedness to persevere and to withstand, to have success with time?
I think you have to. The thing is, when you start a project, in reality, objectively, you should not succeed, right? The odds are really against you. So you have to set that aside and believe in yourself, even so the odds are against you. If you're just approaching from a statistical perspective, you would never do a startup. I think the success ratio of startup companies, I don't have the latest numbers, but out of 100 companies, maybe 50, 60, 70 will fail. Maybe 10, 20 will be okay, and maybe 10% will really be successful. So you have to really believe in yourself. You have to believe that hard work is going to pay off. Even so, luck is also very important in startup success. But you can't think of this. You just focus on what's ahead of you and do your job.
When looking at statistics, it's almost like you would see it on paper and be like, why would I ever venture into entrepreneur land if I know that these odds are stacked against me? But there has to, again, I think getting back to perseverance and drive, that I think is a telltale sign that, hey, maybe a person is cut out for this particular path if in the face of that they're just like, all right, hey, I understand the risk, but I'm following something that's perhaps aligned internally with me, and I'm going to go on this journey regardless.
Yeah, yeah. I think being a CEO, I think first of all, being a CEO or being a startup founder is slightly different. Sometimes they align, right? But it's two different positions. But let's say, as a startup founder, and often people ask me, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a company? And my first advice is don't do it at all because it's really hard. It's going to be very painful. And only do it if you feel this is really the only thing, the only option you have. If you want to become rich, don't do it. If you want to become famous, don't do it for that reason. Do it because this is something you have in you and you want, for whatever reason, maybe you want to prove something to yourself. It's going to be really painful. It's climbing a mountain almost bare feet with no oxygen. You're going to be cold. It's going to be painful. It's not going to be fun. But when you reach the top, this is the fun moment. You're just like, yeah, you did it. But most of the time, it's really hard.
Did you personally feel along your journey that the trying moments that you're advising folks perhaps not to go through were actually helpful in your evolution? Did you learn from those highs and lows? And in the moment, they might have been crappy, but in bird's eye view, they actually, as a whole, were helpful.
I would love to say yes, but when you are in a down moment, it is very hard to look at the bird's eye view. You feel like, oh, this is really bad, and it's very stressful. On the 5 companies that I created, I've come like weeks away from being bankrupt at least 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Always happened to me. And I think if you're not, I think you're probably not pushing hard enough. And every time a miracle happened and something happened and the company was saved at the last minute. But if, yeah, in theory, you think, oh, when you're down, you think, okay, it's not going to last. So hopefully if you show up, if you keep working, as long as you're not dead, you still have a hope that something is going to change, which is true. Very often things change. But also, it's the reverse is true as well. When you're at the top, I think it's more when you're at the top. With experience, you think, okay, let's be careful. Maybe it's not going to last forever. It's just a moment. We have all the planets aligned right now, but who knows what's going to happen in a month or two or a year from now. So you're more cautious, I think.
Isn't it just the same? Aren't these just two sides of the same coin in the sense that
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
caution, the low isn't going to last forever, the high's not going to last forever, but ultimately the idea is that you're riding a wave above whatever the ground floor is.
Yeah, maybe we are addicted to those highs and lows because at least we feel something. So it's not like average. It's always dramatic in one direction or the other.
And so in that sense, do you think that is some of that manufactured to feel something? Like, are there moments that are just exist? Problems aren't as big as they need to be. Some successes are the ends of the spectrum pushed a little bit in order to feel
Feel alive,
something. Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's a question for a therapist. I don't
Yeah,
know,
true.
but maybe. Yeah.
That's interesting. And do you, with Sandbox, what are some of the wins that you can speak to currently for some of the stuff you guys have in the works? And I know you mentioned collaborations with Snoop and Gucci and stuff like that, but what's in the ether that you're currently working on that you're excited about?
So for us, we want more of those. So we're working hard to have more artists, more brands, more companies, more games, more of everything. And that's going very well. But the core of what we do inside the company is really trying or coming up with a better product, improving the product so that it's more enjoyable, people spend more time, people come back more often. It's all games, all platforms. You can be very good at marketing, and we are even doing marketing. You can be very good at PR, you can be very good at biz dev, you can be very good at a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, what matters most is really the quality of the product, the fun, the excitement, the enjoyment that people have using our product. And this is where we spend the majority of our time today.
Gotcha. In that sense, are there any major challenges in accomplishing that goal that you guys face either or have faced previously?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenge for us, but also for everyone in the Web3 space, is the onboarding of the mainstream users. It is difficult. People really don't understand the concept of wallet, the seed phrase, and these kind of things. And I think it's a major challenge for everybody. And we are working very hard at the Sandbox to try to improve it, try to make the onboarding smoother, try to make it easier for ordinary users. Right now, we've had a lot of crypto enthusiasts, the la creme of the crypto users. And our challenge is how do we go mainstream? How do we onboard tens of millions of users instead of millions of users that we have right now?
And to that point, are we a couple years away? Is it further beyond our reach in terms of mass adoption with people using wallets and the seamlessness of all of that technology? Do you think mass adoption is close by? Is it around the corner or is it a little further away?
I don't think you will have one event that you go from going where we are to the mainstream. I think it's going to be gradual, little by little. I think my gut feeling is that we may be a couple of years away from mass adoption. And when I say we, it's really the industry, right? And I think, yeah, we're not there yet. It's getting better and better every day and every month, but we still have a long way to go.
In terms of the more media plans that Sandbox has, can you speak a little bit about what we can expect to see on you mentioned the partnership with Lionsgate. What are some of the film and TV elements that we can expect to see in the future?
I can't announce that yet. We will reveal that a bit later. But I think you'll see more and more brands and IPs and franchise inside the Sandbox. By the way, we're not fully launched yet in that we are still in alpha mode, right? We had alpha one. We call it season. So we open the game for a few weeks, then we shut it down, make improvement, add more content, reopen, and so on. We'd had three alpha seasons so far over the past 2 years, and then the next one is coming soon.
In terms of what you can speak to, maybe we can speak a little more high level about it. Is the plan to, just so I understand, is it to put more established media entities into Sandbox, or is it to have more branded content come through Sandbox? I know Lionsgate is a pillar of film and TV as well. How are those different companies going to be interacting?
So each of them they buy their own land and then they can build, or we build with them the experience that they want. It can be a game, it can be a concert, it can be a shopping, it can be a social experience, whatever they want to build. And obviously, big brands, big IPs are very important for us. But I don't want to forget also at the end of the day, the Sandbox is a UGC platform, and we are a marketplace between creators and users. And we are also spending an enormous amount of time focusing on the creators. Can be anyone from an individual, a small company, a tiny company, medium-sized company. You don't need to be a household name to create your content on the Sandbox. And we've built creators tools that are easy to use, free to use. One is called, for example, the Game Maker. It's a tool you download from sandbox.game, and you can start building content, games, or other experiences right away. It's free to use, and we have adopted a no-code approach, meaning you can't even code. It's just drag and drop, pull down menus, click check boxes, and you can build amazing experiences in no time. So that's also very important for us to attract not only the big brands, but everybody.
Totally. And with the UGCs, is there something that's consistent with, if say you're a successful Sandbox creator, what does that look like and what sort of qualities does someone have in there, or does a group have in terms of the content that they're putting out there?
The good thing, it's not about coding, it's not about engineering or hard stuff. It's all about creativity and having a good idea and having a good narrative and good storyline, and also having an experience that looks good, that has its own brand when it comes to the look and feel of the experience. And the good thing is it's achievable to anybody as long as you're creative and you're smart and want people to have fun. So not everybody can do it, right? Not everybody is creative, not everybody is good at designing or making games, but anybody who has the drive and the interest in building experiences for others can do it.
So in a way, one can create a game within Sandbox, and that is like starting their own company
Yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
you
in
can
many
make
ways,
money,
what you're saying is
monetize.
right. And so you're saying there's a lot of user generated content or people thinking about user generated content within Sandbox, and they can become their own CEOs.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Even if they own CEO of a one-person company, but they can create a product, launch it, and acquiring users and customers and make money for sure.
Cool. Hopefully, from this conversation, anyone interested in creating or starting their own company in general would take a nugget, but specifically for Sandbox, I think Matthew's just provided a nice little roadmap of high level what it would take to successfully run and manage a little enterprise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where can people find Sandbox if they're interested in playing around, and how can they get involved?
So they go to sandbox.game on their browser. They will install a free client software. It's available for PCs and Mac for now. Mobile is coming next year, and they download, create an account, and that's it. They can enjoy the game.
Awesome. Matthew, again, thank you for providing us with a nice overview of what you do and plans for success for Sandbox, and excited to see what you guys continue to cook up.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Lights, Camera, Crypto, a podcast produced by Matt Bogart and Decential Media. Music by Brian Duncan and Kareem Imes. If you enjoyed this experience, be sure to rate and subscribe to our show and to follow @Sladden and @Decential Media for additional content.